All right, I think this is like the 12th time I've tried to do this. I'm going to try and get through this one last time and be done. This is chapter 2, ecosystems and biomes. We're going to be working on lesson 1 right now, and we're going to just review it so that you can do the questions number 1 through 5 on page 77 for your assignment. You're going to take a picture of that assignment and you're going to turn it in. There are some things that I need to make sure that you know so that you can answer these questions correctly. A lot of you were able to do the information from the online stuff that you were given, but there was a large number of you that had some troubles actually making a food chain and making a food web. You gave me lists of what would be in those things, or you made me ones that were different and they didn't interact with each other. Like you may have given me something that would be found in Africa on the savannah, along with something that's found in a rainforest. Those two ecosystems or biomes aren't the same. They don't live in the same area. They don't interact with one another. So the idea in this chapter was to give a food chain, to give a food web, and have the food web be one where everything in it interacts. So let's go through this stuff real fast. Abiotic, we did this before we left. A means without, bio means life. So abiotic are the non-living parts of an organism's habitat. Biotic, bio-life, would be the living parts of the organism's habitat. And a habitat is a place where the organism actually lives, grows, and reproduces, and it has all the necessary things in it to have that happen. An ecosystem is a community of organisms that live together in a particular area, along with all the non-living things in the environment. So it's all the abiotic and biotic factors all interacting and living together is an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, there are energy roles, because you start with the producers. The producers take the energy from the sunlight, convert that light energy into chemical energy with a process known as photosynthesis, and then they make chemical energy and they make oxygen through that process. Oxygen is released and the chemical energy is stored so that when something eats the producer, it gets energy from that chemical energy. That is the sugar that's found in vegetables and fruits. So the foundation of our ecosystem, or all ecosystems, are producers. Without producers, we would all be dead. Another name for a producer is an autotroph. Most of the time when we're talking about producers, we're talking about plants. There is a small little branch of a producer called a chemotroph, which is something that takes chemicals and turns the chemicals into their own energy. And that is only done by a certain type of bacteria. One example is where they convert hydrogen sulfide that's in their environment to make their food. But most of the time when we're talking about producers, we're talking about plants. Consumers, on the other hand, consumers cannot make their own food. They must obtain their energy by the food that they eat. Herbivores are plant eaters. Those are your primary or first level consumers. Carnivores eat the herbivores, or they also eat, when you originally think of that, you think of like a rabbit. You think of something eating the rabbit. Birds are also carnivores if they eat worms and bugs. So they would also be a carnivore. So animals do not just have to be like a big animal. It can also be an insect or a worm or something like that. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. So we typically are considered omnivores. And scavengers, those are what goes around and eats all of the dead organisms that might be laying around. Whole organisms, like if something's killed by a car and it's laying on the side of the road, you'll see vultures eating, or crows eating the dead organism. That dead organism is called carrion, and those are scavengers that are doing that. Here is a food chain. When you often, quite a few of you actually, gave me the food chain, you did not show the actual chain. You showed me a list of producers, consumers, and decomposers. A food chain shows the start of the chain being the producer. That would be, in this instance, grass. The thing that eats the grass is called the primary consumer. The thing that eats the grass is the secondary consumer. And the arrow goes from the grass to the primary consumer. So you can see it going from the grass to the grasshopper. It then has energy that it got from the grass. Then the frog, you see the arrow going from the grasshopper to the frog. It's because the frog eats the grasshopper and gets the energy from the grasshopper. This goes all the way through the entire chain, but you have to have the arrow showing the direction that the energy is going. That's what makes it a food chain. Decomposers fall into all three parts of the ecosystems. Decomposers can break down anything that dies. So anything that's dead, that's on the ground, bacteria, fungus, like mushrooms will go and they will help to break that stuff down into its original raw elements or raw materials. All living things are composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur in various amounts. Those are the basic building blocks of all living things. So decomposers break them down into their original elements. Here is a food web. All a food web is a bunch of food chains. You can see the grasshopper eats the corn, the frog eats the grasshopper, the snake eats the frog, the eagle eats the snake. Here is one branch of the food web. That is one chain in the food web. You see the flow of energy. You can also see where the rat also eats the grasshopper. And then this would be a part of a food chain. When you have multiple chains together, all interacting in that same environment, that is considered a food web. It has to be the same environment. So that's pretty much it for this section. If you have any questions, you need to either email me if you have me as a teacher, or email Mr. Justek if you have him, to make sure we can clarify this before we move on. We're going to finish this up. So today, make sure that you do question 1 through 5, and then take a picture and send that picture through Canvas as your assignment on page 77. Have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.